Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Tuan Dean, and welcome to today's presentation in regards to how to, I forget what we're looking at, resilience in this case. Yeah. So we're going to be watching a 20-minute, 7 seconds video, have a discussion. So hopefully this will be a well thought out discussion of how to use these activities or concepts within your courses. So without further ado, let's look at the video. Oh, this is why I don't like recording. Uh,
Hello there, I'm David Bedcourt. Thanks for taking some time to spend with me these next 20 minutes. I hope they're helpful to you. I want to talk to you today about resilience and just what we've gone through in the last couple of years. So we all know the teaching profession has just seen incredible sort of turmoil in the last few years when we all had to go online. And just the amount of change that happened and the amount of sort of maybe even the number of epiphanies that we had. I know I had a lot of epiphanies because I was realizing what was going on, not just with my own teaching and what I had to change and how I had to adapt, but also just the realization of what was taken away from students and what we were trying to give back to them. And their teaching environment completely changed, and they had to create their own environment. That was a massive change, and then we had to then try and figure out how do we still engage and navigate with all the skills that we had developed. You know, being able to read the room, being able to the way that we delivered, the way that we engaged, all that stuff, and it just was quite mind-blowing, wasn't it? So it made me really think about this idea of resilience and what we could do to remain resilient during all of this. This change. And so today I just want to talk to you about that, the idea of how can we apply a resilient mindset in our own teaching practices and what we can do. And I think that's the fundamental question to address in this session. And so I think a good place to start is just sort of define what resilience is, what it means to be resilient. And we could go online and look at dictionaries and stuff. We'd actually find some really interesting things about just physical properties, the idea that something that is able to shift and expand and actually tighten right back up. That's sort of the level of resilience. By that definition, my body is no longer resilient. So I just can't. I have to be so careful about what I eat, or else I can't bounce right back. And let's be honest, sometimes I can't bounce right back. Anyways, but that's not what we're talking about. The kind of resilience we're talking about is resilience of the mind, right? And the idea that as we sort of are head on with sort of adversity and challenges, and things that come up, life challenges, career challenges, teaching challenges specifically for us. How do we bounce back from it? How are we able to regroup and keep moving forward? And if you're able to do that, then a lot of people will then look towards you and at you and say, well, that teacher, that person is resilient. And to be honest, the idea of resilience, being able to have that, is not just an outward facing where people will say that person is resilient, just for your own well-being, for your own care, to be able to practice resilience is quite empowering in our profession. To be able to bounce back, to know how to bounce back, to have different ways to do it. And so today, in this time we have, I want to maybe just share with you three sort of ideas that I have sort of really toyed with in these last couple of years, and even before, but it's all been underscored now with the pandemic. And so, giving you some ideas to think about, some things we can implement in our own teaching strategies towards just having a resilient mindset. First is the idea of appreciative inquiry. So, we're very much used to as teachers. I know myself, I've struggled with this my entire career of feeling like I've been successful, getting a lot of feedback from students and from colleagues and peers and administrators and everybody about the wonderful things that are going on in the classroom and what they see happening. And then you get your student evals, and you have 1,000 student evals, and one of them says something about teachers who get back to me. And the funny thing about that is that one eval is the one that you'll lose sleep over. That one evaluation, that one comment, that one little bit of feedback. Not all the other 999 comments that were a testament to what you've been able to do in the classroom for your students. And so the idea of moving away from that for me is sort of an epiphany of my own that I had. Just moving to what's going right. What are the things that are going well? What am I doing well? What are the victories that we see every day? And being able to spend some time focusing on that, doing it consciously, doing it with intent. And this is where appreciative inquiry comes into play. Because appreciative inquiry isn't just about focusing on what's going right. We can all do that to some degree, I think. But it's focusing on the why. Why has it gone well? And that's where the inquiry part comes in to play, and where it's most effective, this mindset of appreciative inquiry. So, for instance, if I'm looking at why the students constantly feedback to me about, I feel like I'm always communicating with them. And I'll take an online course, for example, because we've had to do so much online in the last couple of years. I've done a lot of asynchronous teaching, and the students consistently telling me that I am really good at communicating with them, that I'm constantly in touch with them. But in fact, all my announcements, or actually 95% of my announcements, are created before the class even starts. And so what I've realized is that I've reflected on why I'm receiving this kind of feedback, this idea of you communicate well with us, you're always in touch with us, you're always giving us the information. And it's because I've laid out all my announcements ahead of time that go out are fed out at increments as needed according to when assignments are due or when increment is needed, all these other factors. And that has gone really well. And so what I want to do is I want to take that idea, that model that's gone well, and I want to be able to transfer it to something else. What else can I do? What other tools might I be able to use online that do the same thing, where I can have this sense of communication, sense of engagement with the students, the sense of relational teaching. So that's me really enacting this idea of the appreciative inquiry, taking something that works really well, then applying it somewhere else. So that's the first thing that really came to me. The second thing was the idea of growth mindset. Now, this, you're probably familiar with Carol DeWitt and her writings, but this has been around, the growth mindset, for a long time. And while I have embraced it to various degrees over my teaching career, I think in the last couple of years, I've really grabbed onto it, all the way. Just because, let's face it, like, if we had to go completely online, some of us never taught online before, and then all of a sudden it's like everything has to go online. That was a tough change. The learning curve was steep, like the steepest, fastest roller coaster out there. And a lot of us just grabbed on and went for it. In doing so, I think we had to embrace the growth mindset, not just for our students, which we often do. We often advocate for them that the lifelong learning, keep learning. And then sometimes we get so busy and focused on doing that we forget to apply that to ourselves. That what else can we learn? Are we capable of continuing to learn our entire life, continuing to grow? And of course we are. We say so for our students, even if we get adult learners who come in and say, yes, of course. And we're even often so much more impressed that they come in at 30, 40, 50 years old and they want to go back to school and learn something. And we embrace that, embrace it for ourselves. This is what I've really come to terms with. Continuing to learn, continuing to find ways to discover teaching practices. For instance, let's be honest, the one that's right in our face is the online platform. We all had to do it, right? And so whether you enjoyed it or not, I think hopefully one thing I discovered is I'd enjoy it a lot more if I simply embraced this growth mindset and just said, okay, what can I learn from this? What new, whether it was a technology tool, right? Learning how to use not just in that, but learning how to use like the module feature, or learning how to use the recording feature, learning how to present in short snippets, rethinking about how I assess things online and how I could do automatic assessments, all those kinds of things. That all came to play, and it was either sort of a sink or swim sort of situation for us. But I sort of pushed that aside and just said, you know what? Actually, this is an opportunity to keep growing, an opportunity to keep learning. And not only would I benefit, but of course my students would benefit. So that was the second mindset that I grabbed onto. Found it really helpful. And the third mindset is grit. Now, we all like just, it's almost a visceral word, isn't it? I mean, it is. You think of grit and you're just thinking of getting down in the muck and down and dirty and getting things done, but also the idea that, hey, no matter what, we're going to make this happen. Right? It's sort of like this, the British version of the stiff upper lip, where we will carry on regardless sort of idea. And while I do advocate for a level of that, I think there's lots of room for interpretation. Great. So I've always been one who just goes for it. As you know, I'm thoughtful, yes, and I'm reflective. I'm more reflective now that I'm older. I'm more thoughtful now that I'm older. I accept more perspectives now that I'm older, for sure. But I've always been an action guy too. Here we go, let's go. I'm just a little more careful now, so I don't hurt myself or anyone in the process before jumping that cliff. I want to make sure I have a parachute. All that aside, the idea that I'm going to push through something, that I'm going to make it work no matter what, I think has value. And at the same time, there is room for grace. And to me, that is the really important epiphany that I had during the last couple of years, when we had this massive shift in how we were going to deliver, how we were going to assess, how we were going to engage with the students. And understanding that, as a prime example, if you had to take everything that you've done face to face and then turn around and put it all online, how are we going to do that? And the how came in two strands from it. The how and the technical strand, right? With technology, with the practices we use, but also how with the mindset. Like, are we going to pull up our bootstraps and just go for it, and just keep your head down and go? And I think there's a balance between these two, right? You couldn't ignore either one of them. I mean, you can have all the technology in the world and all the resources, but if we didn't have the mindset that said, okay, roll up my sleeves, here we go, then that was going to be really difficult to grab on to all these resources. Likewise, you could have all the grit in the world and you're ready to go, and here we go, roll up my sleeves, pull back my hair. But if you didn't take the time to go grab those resources and avail yourself of those, then you're going to have an equal challenge in making that all happen. So those two working together. At the same time, I'm sure you all experienced what I did several times, which is putting in a lot of time into your classes, trying to figure out how are you going to engage students? How are we going to communicate with them? How are you going to deliver the content in this new format that you were experiencing? And then aside from that, just so you know, I actually have been teaching online asynchronous for almost a decade, and still with that experience and knowledge and skill set, I found this immediate shift quite a challenge. So I think this goes for all of us. And so back to the grit. So did we make mistakes? Yes, I made a lot of mistakes. Or often the technology wouldn't work the way I thought it was going to work. Or I didn't understand the technology. Something went out that shouldn't have gone out. A mistake somewhere. uh, mislabeling or something, anything like that. Or something really simple like, I forgot to push the publish button. And now I had done all this work and the students didn't have access to it until somebody said, hey, we can't find this. Ooh. And then I have to figure that out. And all that has happened. And in the workload quantity, I'm going to suggest that you think about giving yourself grace, treating yourself with grace, and letting some things go. Some things will have to go, and that's okay. That's human. And we are humans before we are teachers. And that's really important. I think to be able to show that to your students, it's okay to make mistakes in front of your students. In fact, it's incredibly empowering for them and for you on different levels. For them, because they see that you are human, that you make mistakes, and that's an opportunity for you to show them that you're growing in the moment. You can show them that growth mindset. You can show them the resilience. You can show them the grit. You can show them appreciative inquiry. All of that stuff can be on full display for them, which then empowers them to do the same, but it also empowers you. You no longer have to be the sage on the stage. You can be who you are, the best of who you are for them, which includes the human side of all of us. And that's making mistakes once in a while, and that's okay. So, grit with grace is my message with that third one, is allow yourself to make mistakes and be okay with it, and to just move on, and to figure out how to deal with those mistakes. That's also empowering, isn't it? Right? Because some people think of mistakes as failure. It's just an opportunity to grow. That's it right there. So those three mindsets for me have been pivotal, been monumental, have been impactful, have been empowering in me moving forward through the last 2 years. And I feel so much better for it. Even as we're beginning to transition into the face-to-face, I'm taking those mindsets with me. The idea of resilience on a conscious level, figuring out how I bounce back by using these three mindsets. Again, the appreciative inquiry, right? That idea of focusing on what is working and why it's working, and then applying that to other facets of your teaching. That's the first one. The second one, again, was the growth mindset. We can all continue to grow our entire life, cognitively, emotionally, socially, all those intelligence. Really important. And the third one was, of course, grit, which I spent a lot of time on talking about. So I think grabbing those three. Now, one of the cool things about being able to do this session is that I'm able to provide you additional resources. So I've done that. I do hope you'll take the time to take a look at the reflective questions. And then what I have found is answering those questions for myself has led me to then look at what I'm doing in the classroom, the teaching practices that I implement, and just take a second look at those and think, okay, would I like to revise this? What's a way that I can increase the success for my students, the engagement for my students, the relational teaching with my students, and also the efficiency of my own teaching, the delivery methods of my own teaching, what I do, how effective I am as a teacher. So looking at those reflective questions, I hope they're helpful for you. And in addition, there's a list of resources there. If you want to delve a little deeper into any of these mindsets, whether it's the concept of resilience or the appreciative inquiry mindset, the growth mindset, or the idea of grit, you want to delve deeper in any of those, check out those resources. I think you'll appreciate them and enjoy the readings. I find them all very beneficial. And so I hope this has been something that you're able to walk away from and say, yeah, I'm going to grab something. And so the one last thing I would ask of you before I conclude here is to just consider, after taking in these 20 minutes and maybe taking a little peek at those questions, is taking away a nugget of everything that you've just heard from me or possibly read, if you've pursued a little deeper. what's the nugget that you're going to take? What's the actionable item that you're going to take away from this? And I would love for you to then write that down somewhere for yourself that you can either just put on the fridge or put on your computer screen at work or at home, wherever, someplace where you then are able to read it again and then act on it. Whether it's an email you're going to send, it's a book you're going to read, it's a conversation you're going to have, it's a look at your syllabus or some of your assignments and think about how you might revise some of those based on this information that I've shared with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time with me today, and I hope that I'm able to at some point collaborate with you, and I hope that this has helped you, and thank you.
All right. So, what do we think about the resilient mindset? And there should be light.
Well,
Yes.
I have a tendency to focus on what's going wrong and why, rather than what's going right and why. So that can have to be a big shift on my part for my own teaching, but then to translate that to the students too. And to get them thinking about all the things that they're doing well and to work on what isn't going right, but to really congratulate themselves on what is.
And how would you try to implement that in your instruction
I don't know,
to your students?
Yeah, that's what I would have to think about on my drive home.
You're right. I think and it is true, we have a tendency to look at all the things that's bad. And I give the example of a student today asking me about, well, I'm doing this, but I'm not. They're looking at all the things they were doing bad in the class. And I said, you're focusing on the bad things, but not the good. I said, because you're doing well. You're coming to class, you're participating, and you're saying that your quiz grades are not really that good. But I was like, but you're defining good based on what's bad. And I said, you're not really doing bad. So the student, in this case, with that mindset of thinking they're going to do worse in the class, they're going to fail the class. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're thinking of more the negative than the more positive. However, how about everyone else? What do you think of the different 3 types of the mindsets, this resilient of the mind for our students and for ourselves?
Well, I think I certainly have.
We can hide.
Hi, go ahead. You're the next caller. Go ahead.
I was wondering how we can give the positive feedback to our students in spite of their various efforts.
And how would you try to do that? With more email communication or verbal communication or written communication, or both, all 3?
All 3, but I am thinking on it's easier to do that with the students who are doing well and also in the middle, but with the more challenged students, how do I give them that positive feedback? That's what I'm thinking right now. It's a challenge.
It is. I mean, I see it on my end that I give all my students feedback, even those who are doing well. I give them an applause, I would say, and saying that, yes, even though you're doing well in the class, there's still that room for improvement. And it's not a negative thing, because I like what he said, that we have to look at ourselves, and I say the same thing. I'm always looking at to do things effectively, and I even related to one of my postgraduate classes that I'm taking right now, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I got to do this, got to do this, I got to do, I got to get it done. But then I tell my students, or I share with my students, sometimes I have to think about, I know I can, and I push myself, but I'm human too. I understand. Sometimes we just get behind, and then I actually have a poster in my bedroom that always tells me to keep rising and keep going. So I always look at that to make sure. So I guess there is a way to do it. I don't know if there's a wrong way or a right way, unless others had some comments or something to say.
I agree that I don't think there's a wrong way or a right way, because it comes down to each individual person's temperament, and their lived experiences and how they think of themselves and how they apply it. Yeah.
You don't want to expand on that?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I can't. But you asked.
I did.
I will expand on it though.
And how would you, go ahead.
Oh, no, ask the question.
One of my question would be, how would you relate it to one of the mindsets that we were just talking about?
So, sorry, I'm trying to think of like a specific example, because I love using examples, but I don't have one right now.
Okay.
Oh no, I do have one. Appreciative inquiry.
Okay.
So today we were talking about, in one of my classes, about why children ask why. Because it feels like it can be annoying. Why? I'm like, but what are they really asking when they ask you why? What do they want to know? The students were like, oh, they just want to know how things work. And I'm like, exactly. So every time they'd ask me a question today, they'd be like, Professor, what's this? Or Miss, what's this? And I'm like, why? Why do you think? And they were like, oh. So then they had to take it back in on themselves and find the answer for themselves. And I think we're not always challenged to find the answer for ourselves, because we have Google at our fingertips. And it makes it harder to challenge ourselves when we can just feel content or distracted rather than moving. I don't know if this is actually answering the question. I think I might have taken this in a different way.
We were on the bus, yeah. Right.
I drove the bus somewhere else.
But that's okay. That is quite all right. Sometimes we have to go to a different destination to learn something.
Yeah. But so for me, it's indirect teaching students how to do that, because it's self-reflective and thinking, okay, why are you doing it this way? Why are you thinking about it? Why are you just expecting me to give you the answer?
Okay. Right.
It's like going to therapy and saying, why do you feel that way?
Yeah.
Why do you think you feel that
I
way?
noticed you said this.
Yes.
Why are you
Right.
I do
you
that.
tell me.
I know my students are always like, just tell me. I'm like, you tell me.
And
You said it.
you're right. Psychologists and psychiatrists actually do that. They reflect it back on us, and we're supposed to be trying to get answers from them, and we're actually answering our own questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does happen. It does happen. All right. Yes. That was a question. So, I love the last of the three, the grit in this case, because I'm always going back and reflecting on it. And there is a book out called Grit for all of you that actually talks about how to do that. So, my question, to be the facilitator of this all, and we'll to talk more. My question would be, how, as an instructor here at Triton College, would you implement or somewhat integrate it into your teaching methodology, grit? But I like the idea of you saying there's self-reflection of that, have them to self-reflect on themselves. Well, grit does have that, because we actually look at, we're more critical of ourselves than anyone. How can we implement that into our teaching philosophy or our teaching, our instruction. I don't want to say teaching.
I think part of grit is taking risks. So just encouraging the student who doesn't want to talk or is afraid that their answer might be wrong, just to try and to let them know that there's no real consequence, negative consequence for trying, especially if in a discussion. And there might be a negative consequence on a quiz or something like that, but if you're having a classroom discussion, there's really nothing wrong with trying.
That is true.
We were playing a game in class the other day, and one of the students wasn't participating, and he didn't want to be wrong. So then it was a game where you lost points if you were wrong, gained points if you were right. So we took away the point loss, and then he was more engaged with the activity because he wasn't afraid of losing.
I like that. Actually, I can see that because most students in this case are focused on their grades and afraid that by saying something incorrect or out of place or being themselves or all the above, they don't want to participate in to lose those points for that.
And it was just points for bragging rights. It wasn't like points for the grade. It was just, I understand this.
Right.
It was for self-worth.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Point abstract.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you three?
It's a great question. I actually don't know. I don't. It's one thing within myself. It's, guide someone towards resiliency is pretty daunting.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I keep trying to think of what do I do? How do I do that?
Do you teach lesson plans? I always find that that's one of the hardest things that they have trouble with, and then they don't want to write them anymore because they're like, oh, I did so terribly in the first one, and I'm like, that's okay.
You're
Like,
supposed to get better.
yes, because if your lesson plans were automatically great, you wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't need this class. You would already be out in the field teaching and not have to worry about this at all. But that's one of the ways that I have to structure Ingrid is like reinforcing that, hey, this is an attempt. You can rewrite the lesson plan because you are supposed to get better. And that's one of the more challenging things. I've also had students come to me and be like, hey, I'm failing your course. And I'm like, I know that. I've been trying to talk to you about it. But it takes them, because, they don't want to hear that. Then they're not ready to talk about it. So they'll come to me and say, I know you've been reaching out to me. And they're like, what do I do? I'm like, is there any extra credit I can do? And I'm like, you go back and do the assignments for the course. And they're like, that's it? I'm like, well, yes, because that was the assigned material. And they're like, but it feels so late in the semester. I'm like, push through it, get it. Most of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them don't take advantage of that. I've only had one that has so far. But when she did it, she felt so much better about herself. And she was like, I can't believe that I thought that this assignment was going to be so hard and then to push back all of my other assignments because I'm so afraid to do any of them.
I was thinking of something you said, and I was thinking of the example of, actually today, to go back, one of my classes that I was teaching today for all of you, college algebra class to be exact. And in the class, I walked in, I told my students, I got up this morning, I was so ecstatic. I got in my car, I was more ecstatic. I'm driving here, I was racing. And I get here and ask a question, you all ruined it. And they're like, what? Yeah, you ruined it. So you ruined it because of the fact you took away the energy that I brought in. Now, the reason why I said this to them is I thought that it would motivate them a little bit more. And I said, because I remember reading one of my evaluations and saying that I don't come in with enough energy. And I'm like, really? Me? Enough energy? Okay. So I brought in more. Then to get there, just like that, it was a hush. I'm like excited. I'm like, we're gonna do this today, and let's turn to each other and say, yes, we got this. It's like nothing, no one. I said, so we're just gonna be quiet. Yep. As everyone in the room, for those online, they just look at me. I looked at them. I said, my energy's gone. Now, I say this because of the fact that grit, in this case, says you learn because you're human. We learn from those things. And I learned from the evaluation that I should bring in more energy. But every class, like you were saying with the lesson plan, we learn from that. You learn that, yeah, today's exercise, they probably wasn't excited about it like I was. Because, you know, before they got to class, they had an idea what we were going to be talking about and demonstrating and looking at some of the problems. They probably weren't excited like I was. So I was like, okay, I've learned I maybe have to approach it a little bit different because every class is never the same. Every person is never the same. So you're right, with a lesson plan, they feel like, oh my God, I don't know how to do it. Well, if you knew how to do it, you wouldn't be here.
No.
And I think of the students that I have in the class, they knew how to do it, they wouldn't be here. So what did I do? Well, nevertheless, I turned back on the energy, and I think that's what inspired them to do it a little bit more, because now they were like, okay, he's excited about it. Maybe we should be excited about it. After they learned what we were going to do and how we were working with the problems, there it was. I brought it back. But I learned from that. And you're right, it's hard to do that reflection of having students look at themselves and saying, what's wrong? Why are you not smiling today? What's going on with you? And you're like, oh, find that resilient. Let me dig deep. Let me go back to finding some more and bring it back because, yeah, it does happen. That's what I was thinking of when you said that about the lesson plan. And I was like, I did that today. And I even gave them the example. Actually, I elaborated more. I said I got up, got dressed, drove my car. I was like, I'm still excited. And one of my students looked at me weird, like, you were excited to get in your car? I was excited to come to Triton because the lesson that we were talking about that I'm going to be doing this evening in my evening class, which is a little bit different than the afternoon and the morning class. Yeah. The evening class, I'm all excited. That excitement because I'm dealing with adult learners who are coming from work and they need that energy. They want that person, which I've heard from them saying that they want that person to come in with energy because they don't want to be in the class with one hand on their cheek, just sitting there. Whereas you have your morning students, look different demographics, so you're like, okay, what do I do different for this class? So I'm always doing that reflection. But
Every class has a different personality.
it does. And you find any and all kind of appreciation of how to do it, change the different mindset for each class, because everyone's different. Every class is different. So enough of me talking, because I could talk the entire time. Let's look at some other aspects of this mindset of our teaching abilities. What can we change based on our presentation today about maybe an instruction, maybe the class, maybe ourselves, or, well, we can't change our students. I know, most of us thinking, why would we change all the students? Yeah, but we have to look at the less achiever, the in the middle achiever, the high achiever, and the one that just does everything. Go ahead, you talk. I'll just stand here and listen. And for those who are online, chime in. We'd love to hear from you. Sounds like a class right now.
You gotta give us a second. You gotta give the pause.
The pause?
The pause.
You are absolutely right.
question again though, because I got distracted by the thoughts. I'm just being honest.
You. Oh, like every class, I tell my students, do this. That was just beautiful. All right. We're looking at what would you implement or change grit in regards to your teaching lesson or instruction. And when I say lesson, I mean that material that you were going over that day, or the structure of the course itself. Like, okay, maybe I won't be so energetic every day. I told my students that's never going to happen. Just so excited. I love learning. I love making mistakes. Actually, I do make mistakes in class, and to show them that I am human, because for everyone, especially in virtual land, I say this with all due respect because I teach math. I know that math is everyone's kryptonite if they were Superman. Yep, there it is. Yeah. But there is joy in it. There's always some type of joy. And there's some really bad math jokes in it as well too. But, you try to get students not to love the subject, but appreciate it. So we try to find those things to do. But enough from me. Let's talk about you. Yes, Terry. Hello, my name's Terry.
I'm still new enough that I tweak it every time, right? Like I try to take notes after each class, just brief. I mean, just, okay, this worked, this didn't, or maybe I don't like that video after all, or maybe like each class has different personalities. So some things work one year and the next year you're like, I don't know. And so I try to keep changing it up or keep adding or subtracting or finding new things or supplementing or finding a new article or I don't know. I don't know if that's grit, but that's just keeping it fresh and keeping it, if something doesn't work, not being upset by it. Just, well, okay, what else can I do instead? Or what else would be more interesting or would be more informative,
But you learn from it.
I get a lot out of it. I don't know. I think it's translated, but I don't know.
But let's take it going back to you as the individual. You tried this, you know if it worked or not worked. Or let's say this, what if it did work? What did you learn from it? Because I say this for all of you because I do things and I learn from it saying, okay, maybe this worked well now, but maybe I could add X, Y, and Z. Or it worked perfectly, but the next class it may not. So let me take out X, Y, and Z as well too. Because you're right, every class is the same, not the same. And for me, because I love teaching evening classes, I'll do something in the morning class or an afternoon class. It just not work well in the evening. Because I'm like, maybe I should have took. And then I'll learn from it. It's like, okay, next semester I'll do this a little bit different based on that lesson or the material that we were covering.
Only they could see that behind the scenes, right? To know, like, it's not always perfect. We're changing it up to fit the needs and and
Maybe
modeling resiliency, but they can't see that necessarily.
Maybe they should.
I mean, maybe they should.
I had an accidental resiliency lesson. I mean, they don't know that, but I accidentally demonstrated it for them though, because I had an unexpected, we had planned for a college to come out and visit, but we were not told what date they would be coming to the class, and all of a sudden, halfway through my lecture, I have people at the door expecting to come into my classroom, and I knew they were coming eventually, I just didn't know that they were coming that moment. Exactly. So they came in, introduced themselves, sat down, observed the class for a bit, gave their spiel on their university, and left. And I looked at the students and I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that was going to happen. Can someone help me get back on track?
But I think
but they got to
they
see.
appreciate the realness.
Yeah. And I thank them for their flexibility. But they got to see a real moment where they were like, oh, she had no idea that this was happening.
Well, and it was nice, it was inclusive, what you did too. It wasn't just you trying to recover, it was you trying to recover everybody.
Yeah.
And asking for their help.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, they're all going to be teachers, so they need to see how you get your footing back in the moment. Like they, Yeah, huge part of it,
Ooh,
the training.
that's something interesting. Have anyone ever had the same experience as Hunter when you had to ask your class to get back on track? Because you're right, it shows that you're human as well, just like they are.
I mean, only when they start telling me about ranch ice cream outside of that.
Ranch, what?
Yeah, and there's Cheetos ice cream too. Sorry, I'm getting you off track. But you see it? Someone was telling me, and they were like, Miss, did you know? And I'm like, ranch ice cream.
Did you say, why?
I did actually.
I'm thinking why as well too. Who? And I'm thinking who? How?
Only in those moments do we have to like, but that's like the normal like class, like let's get back on track kind of thing, not the unexpected outside force. I've done it a lot in early childhood when I was teaching like young children where like the tornado alarm or the tornado drill would suddenly happen or the fire alarm would go off unexpectedly. But yeah.
I've had to ask for technological help in middle class.
Oh yeah, me too.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like,
I can't reach the
yeah.
things, so I have to get people to reply to me.
How about you, Rodrigo?
I teach math and is for me, I told them the other day I was doing something, well, usually math take 1,000 years to do things, right? And, you know, I told them that is the most concentrated history class they take in their life. Is that it's not more concentrated things. The life could go in half an hour, 200 year history. Then I try to them to let them know the idea of encouraging that is first thing, I don't have a clue what we're talking about because I don't. If we're talking about malaria research, sure, I know. But the rest of the math, I don't know. I don't know anything. I know very little. Actually, almost nothing. Insignificantly nothing. Then when I'm teaching this class right now, what is the last math class that is in Triton, I told them I don't have a clue. For me, if we're talking about my class, malaria research, I know a little bit, only a little bit. Then when the student they find out that is, I don't know nothing, I know nothing, then I think they get a little more involved in the whole idea of encouragement. And we did something in 1 hour and a half, was 150 years of history. Somebody did in the middle of 1750. Somebody produced, the thinking was in 1750. The idea was in a little early 1800. And the way we teach it today happened in 1900. Therefore, doing that kind of stuff in them, that is first, when you mentioned that is, you guys think I'm human, I never had that problem in my house, my class, never. Because from the beginning, I'm in the bottom part. From the beginning, I am not authority in my class. Therefore, I never had the problem that is, there's an authority person there. And also, I don't have the problem that is, I'm not going to make mistakes because I do all the time.
Okay.
Therefore, I never had that kind of relation in my classroom. Never. Never. Then, well, you know, I'm old. I've been teaching maybe 40, no, more than that, 50 years. Then, from the beginning, I have a professor, they told me that. And I have been doing all the time. I'm come here being the facilitator. I read the material before you. Then here we're going to do it together. And even I do in my PhD class when I teach PhD students, they do the same. Because, yeah, well, they are a little bit more, you know, most likely more updated the research than I am in particular areas. besides Miami. And now what I know, then I don't have those issues in my classroom at all.
Well, I wouldn't say that you're not old. No. I don't think of old. I think of my mother, God rest her soul, who said the following phrase. Old is when you have one foot on the stone and the other one, all they have to do is push you over. And angel got his wings. You're still here, you're not old. But you're right. In that, I don't want to run out of time because I was given, it's almost time for all of us. Thank you. I hope that the presentation and our talking experience, we shared, we learned, we go away and probably try something different. And Hunter says she wants to do the recap of the three things that he said. And what was that? What was the first one, Hunter?
Appreciative inquiry.
Appreciative inquiry. Yeah. Let's appreciate that one. Okay. All right. Sounds good. What's that, Terry? What was the other one?
Growth mindset.
Growth mindset. Oh my God. We all have to develop that in our cognitive behavior and maybe in our emotions as well too. And then last but not least, let's say it all together. Grit. Oh my gosh. Let's learn from ourselves and the mistakes that we make, and hopefully we implement them or change ourselves. Thank you, all of you, for coming in for today. I greatly appreciate your participation. I greatly appreciate all of you. And as I tell my students in every class, this week, this phrase of stay nice, stay beautiful, stay kind, but always stay optimistic and unwind when you get home. Thank you again.
Thank you. I like it.